Hello everyone, it's 10 o'clock sharp here in the Netherlands, so we're going to start with today's webinar. Welcome. My name is Eric Nijveld, co-founder and CEO of technologycatalog.com, the leading technology platform for the energy transition. In November last year, we announced the winners of the Tech for the Energy Transition Awards 2021. And our motivation for organizing these awards was to highlight the role of technology in achieving net zero. There were 5 award categories, and in today's webinar, we give the 5 winners, as well as the other 10 finalists, the opportunity to pitch their technology. And by the way, for those who didn't make it to the finals last year, we're going to organize another award competition this year, and more details will be announced sometime in the middle of this year. Before I move to the first category, few practicalities. For each category, we will first do the pitches of the finalists with 6 minutes per company. This is then followed by a brief Q&A session. And if you have any questions, you can type them in the Q&A box that you see on your left-hand side. And in case there's not enough time to address your question, then I would like to encourage you to contact the supplier directly. And an easy way to do that is to go to the technology page on technologycatalog.com and to type in your question via the contact form. The webinar will be recorded and you will receive a link after the webinar, and feel free to share the link with your colleagues. It's exactly 11 o'clock here in the Netherlands, and so it's time to move to the next category, digitalization, which is clearly a multi-industry theme. It's critical to increase the efficiency of conventional industries, and clearly it also plays a key role to deliver and operate renewables assets. With that, we would like to move to the first presentation and also the winner in this category, Geert Meulenbert from DCbrain, a company based in France. Geert, over to you.
Meulenbert from DCbrain out of France. As everyone is aware, there's a big challenge ahead of all of us to reduce the use of fossil fuels, oil and gas in particular. And the good news is that for the gas industry, there's a real road towards carbon neutrality with the use of green gases. And green gases come in 2 flavors mostly today. One is biogas, which is made out of waste, and the other is hydrogen. And when hydrogen is produced using renewable energy sources like solar or wind, it really becomes a green gas. And maybe we could move on to the next slide. And this is exactly what the European Union is preparing right now, with a very clear roadmap towards carbon neutrality. But this generates a lot of complexity, and that's the kind of the bad news. One of the characteristics of hydrogen is that you need 3 times more volume to generate the same amount of energy. And that's posing a real challenge to end users who actually need the energy. The second characteristic is that renewable injections are now local, they are decentralized, they are dynamic. It's not anymore that there's a big pipe from Groningen, from Russia, or from Norway that's flowing into your network. The setup, the network is really different. And last but not least, there are assets, there are pipes that may not be able to cope with this new energy flowing into the networks. Next slide, please. So what we did at DCbrain, we created a so-called digital network twin, which is kind of a model how gas propagates into networks. And that means the volume of gas, that means the pressure of the gas, and it also means the quality of the gas. And with that, you can do a wide range of use cases. Next slide, please. And this explains a little bit how we are doing this. And we're doing this using what we call a hybrid artificial intelligence. That means that we define the boundaries of how molecules can behave. So whatever we do, we cannot cross those boundaries. And that allows us to be extremely fast and extremely flexible in the way this network model is going to operate. And we have done tests with real measurements on the field, and the digital model can achieve reliability of over 90%, which is very, very good. And next slide, please. This will allow us to address a certain number of key challenges. One is how to design a network. If you have 30 different projects competing with different technologies, different qualities, different inflows, how do you manage that on your network? Secondly, how can I invoice correctly my end customers in terms of green gas? And how do I at the same time protect my assets, my pipes, on the constraints that I have on my network? And next slide, last slide, please. And this is exactly what we do at DCbrain, and it requires a lot of detailed experience on how networks operate. It depends also on the digital twin that we have designed and the team that implements the use cases. But a last word, I assume there are not that many operators of gas transmission or distribution networks among us today, but wherever you have a complex network, DCbrain can help. And we do a lot of projects, for instance, in the logistics sector, also to reduce transportation and CO2 related to transportation. And there are many, many use cases ahead of us where this technology of hybrid AI can help. I thank you very much for your attention and looking forward to answering your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Geert, and for that overview. With that, I would like to move to the next presentation. Actually, before I do that, for those that just joined, once more emphasize that if you have any questions, you can type them in the Q&A box on the left-hand side of your screen. I would now like to hand over to Srikanth of Flutura.
Thank you, Eric. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, can hear you. I suppose you're dialing in from India, Srikanth, or from your
dialing from Houston, Eric.
From Houston, oh, so it's very early for you. Welcome. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody, and I'm Srikanth, the Chief Customer Officer for Flutura. So, in fact, I'm sure a lot of the industry folks are looking at exciting future in the next 30 years. And obviously, this transition is going to take quite a bit of investment in terms of infrastructure changes, in terms of operating procedures. A lot of refining and chemical companies are seriously looking at diversifying their portfolio of their products itself. So in the midst of this, and every industry on the planet is undergoing a change. So how do we react and how do we be agile in terms of our operations? That's the topic of discussion. Next slide, please. So if you look at it over the last 3 or 4 months, the naphtha prices has increased dramatically, and primarily because of the way the demand is being generated in the market. And if you look at it, most of the, we have been speaking to many operators over the last 6 months. So are they able to take advantage of these price fluctuations which happen in the market and produce the high value products in their plant so that they maximize their profits? And if you look at it, almost there are many refiners and chemical plants who are not taking advantage of it. And the margin difference of a best performing refinery which can, or chemical plant which can take advantage of this price is around 12%. And at the lower end, those who do not take advantage, they actually lose 6% of their margins. So the idea is, how do we enable operators to have more precision execution tools to manage their day-to-day operations and ensure that their profits are realized? And in the midst of it, for example, there are many process upsets which happen within the plant. And if you are able to detect some of these process upsets, and many of the times the process upsets typically leads to an unplanned shutdown of the plant. And if there are any products, interim products, which needs to be vented out. So, quite a few times flaring happens. Some of the emissions would increase because of that. And most importantly, there's a margin loss which happens. So the market needs a lot of decision-making tools. Next slide. So at Flutura, we basically offer what we call as digital assistants. And the way we differentiate ourselves is, many cases, if you look at digital twin technologies, they start with looking at solving equipment level process subsets. Predictive maintenance is one of the most common use cases, which many of the companies deploy initially. But we see a lot of value, for example, in terms of return on investments when actually operators move to solving more process and system level issues. And over the last 3 to 4 months, we are seeing a lot of inquiries in terms of how do you help them to do hybrid simulation and scenario planning, the one which is on the leftmost top of the box. So where you have the market conditions, you need to configure the plan to maximize your profits as per the market reality. And today there are not enough tools, for example, to look at their monthly operating plan and then realize the day-to-day operations itself. So these are some of the digital assistants which are available as part of our product, which is Cerebra. Next slide. So how does it look like? Just wanted to share a quick insight. So this is basically a plant where we had onboarded close to around 80 heat exchangers. And the blue line you see is basically the health of the equipment. And the green line you see is basically the fuel gas consumption going up. So basically, if you look at it, there is an increase in terms of the carbon intensity in the plant. But at the same time, there's quite a bit of margin loss which happens because of higher fuel gas consumption. So we basically provide algorithms, and again, like the first speaker mentioned, many of these problems need a hybrid approach in terms of looking at first principle based thermodynamics models along with machine learning. And what you see is at the end of the day, the operator needs to see simple action taking tools and not worry about the algorithms which actually really behind the scenes which detect these process subsets. And most importantly, the next slide. So, as we detect these process subsets, the operator, they don't have the time. It's a fast-paced world. They just don't have the time to analyze and react to the situation. So there are specific tools to pinpoint where these problems are occurring for us. So for example, in this case, recently we detected one of the heated tubes was not performing well, and because of that, the overall thermal efficiency of the plant was not so high. So basically, you get specific actions to take in order to ensure that these process upsets are taken and the emissions are reduced. Next slide. So just wanted, in conclusion, this is an example of the return on investment which one of the plants has realized in the less than 8 months of deploying our product. So it's a 75,000 barrel per day plant. It has a lot of process units for a typical refinery. Almost close to around 5,000 assets. We have onboarded the product to close to around 1,000 assets. And there are various benefits which the customer has gained in terms of reduction of fuel gas, in terms of improving the MTBF of pumps. Most of the pumps are run by electric motors, for example. So there's a reduction in energy consumption by detecting these process subsets. And we also, work very closely with the customer to quantify the benefits which they had in dollar terms. And that's what you see there. So thank you so much and look forward to your questions.
Hey, many thanks, Srikanth, for the great presentation. We're now going to move to the third presentation in this category from Bram van der Boom of TechBinder. Bram, over to you.
Thank you very much, Eric. So good morning. Do you hear me loud and clear?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. So welcome to our pitch presentation. I like to present our company and our solutions. We do not do anything typically new if you look at the industry, so the process industry, but we are quite innovative if you look at the marine operations where we are focusing on. What we do is we bring those technologies that are already used in industry to a maritime environment. But before I explain a little bit more, let's go to the next slide, and I will give you a little bit more of the idea of the working field. So today's operations, roughly 90 to 95% of the decisions made are always made by humans. And they do that based on experience and expertise that they gained over the years. But I do not have to tell you probably that those people are most likely to go on pension leave, and it's very difficult to distribute the knowledge that's in the heads of people at the moment. On the other side, we see that assets are getting more and more smart, and with that more and more capable to tell what they need and how they need to be operated. Though these assets all communicate to different data silos, which means that again, it's very difficult to distribute the knowledge across from all these different assets across your operations. That is in a situation where we need to change. We need to move to more environmental operations, but as well, a lot of other influencers in the maritime market influence that the way that business is being managed, and that leads to there's a huge need for a reduction in risk mitigation. So if you go to the next slide. So our portfolio brings the knowledge that's currently hidden in the people's head and the knowledge that can be gained from assets together into one system and makes it distributable across your organization and your whole value chain. So on the left side, you see our smart vessel optimizer that gets information from the assets into a central location and presents this information in a way that's easy to understand. And with our smart field support application, we bring that information into the field and we capture information that's now in the heads of expert engineers and bring that to less trained engineers in an easy to understand content. If you go to the next slide. We work in 4 steps that continuously repeat themselves. So we start with connecting to assets and to knowledge that's currently in the heads of people. We collect that until we have a specific threshold enough to be analyzed. And out of these analytics, actions are being created. And this repeats itself because typically we find information and actions that need more information. And by allowing our customers to go through these steps continuously, we continuously improve the knowledge base that's captured in the systems and continuously improve operations with that. So if you go to the next slide. But now specifically for energy reduction. So based on our architecture, we have developed 10 journeys, and one of them is the energy reduction journey. It's a step-by-step approach, including technology needed to bring down energy use on existing vessels. That is, a lot of the innovations done today are based on new built vessels, but we have a huge fleet sailing around that is missed out, but will be sailing around for the next 25 to 30 years. What we do is we first start to monitor what is the behavior of the people and the personnel on board vessels so that we can instruct them to do better and change their behavior that impacts the energy use of a vessel. As energy is practically always fuel and is always emissions with that. The next stage, we are going to monitor where is the energy going to. So do we have high usage? How is the energy distribution? What are the big contributors? And can we do small system optimizations on the vessel, like installation, to reduce the energy use needed for the operation? The last step is an optimized technical configuration. That's where we are going to change the way that, for instance, pressure is being brought from the back to the front of the vessel, or heat is being transported across the vessel. For new builds, there's a 4th phase, because now we can use the operational profile of the existing vessels to design new builds. And I will give you some examples if you go to the next slide. In the left corner, you will see on the top the daily operation of an offshore support vessel. And you do not need to be a specialist to think that there can be some better, made some better planning and some better decisions. So by making it visual what a vessel is actually doing in a day, we can allow now the captain and the crew and the shore crew to plan better and to make a more effective routing of this vessel. On the right upper corner, you see the difference between the port side and the starboard engine if we look at the high loads and the usage. So we see that one of the engines is using significantly more fuel and for that producing significantly more emissions in the high loads than the other one. This brings up questions, and now the crew can act and try to improve the engine that is using significantly more fuel. If you go to the left down corner, all the measurements that we bring into our system are being analyzed by an AI, and it's first starts with an anomaly detection. So no anomaly will be missed anymore by the crew and can be acted upon. And here you see that the starboard main engine fuel rate has gone up higher, way up higher than it used to be. On the last image, you see that over time we look at the operational profile of a vessel, and we see that the design speed is not matching the speed that the vessel is actually sailing to. If you go to the last slide. So together with our technology partners who each deliver a piece of the puzzle, we create solutions that improve the operations, and we make sure that information is never getting lost again and will find its way to the right person in time, anytime. Thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Bram, and thanks to all the presenters. So we now have time for Q&A. If you have any questions, please type them in. I see one question here for DCbrain. How can we train the intelligence of the system now to design and optimize a hydrogen network that does not yet exist?
Well, good question. The nice thing about digital twins that it does not necessarily have to represent an actual situation, because you can simulate networks. So it's very well possible, and that's what's actually happening with all those renewable hydrogen projects coming up to steam, need to be approved, needing budgets, and those impacts need to be simulated, and that's exactly what a digital twin is capable of doing.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks. A question to Srikanth. So Srikanth, you presented some impressive pictures in terms of impact that you made with the technology. Can you say something about in which industry or for which type of customers you typically saw the most impact?
Yeah, currently I think we are focusing on oil and gas as well as the chemical sector, and these are two of the biggest industries. And we are also seeing, for example, heat exchangers and a lot of heating equipments are available in metals and mining industry as well, where there's a lot of furnace and fuel consumption. This is another industry which can take advantage of a solution.
Okay, excellent. A question to TechBinder. Do we have sufficient satellite coverage and bandwidth to support vessels globally?
That's a good question. We need to put some serious cropping technologies on there if we want to use satellite, indeed, because it's not sufficient. Though we have as well mechanisms that allow us to store on board the vessel and then only send the information when there's a suitable connection, so like a 3, 4, or 5G, which can be pushed over, if you use an extender and it's the right conditions, over 70 kilometers offshore. So there's quite some coverage using 3, 4G, though indeed, if you want to use satellite and you are in the middle of the ocean, you can run into challenges, specifically if you are going to push huge amount of data.
Yeah, thanks for that. There's one comment here, and it's nice to need to indeed highlight that comment. A comment coming in: hey, how can I get involved in all of these brilliant projects moving forward, or even to speak to the speaker companies and speak to them personally? Well, a way definitely is to reach out to them directly. So most presenters did capture their contact details on the slides, but one way you can contact any company as well is to go to technologycatalog.com and search for the technology, and then use the contact form to reach out. And the system is set up in such a way that the contact form will be sent to the right person in the company. Perhaps one other question to Geert. So Geert, you showed a couple of customers on your side in a couple of countries. Can you say something about where geographically you see most interest for your technology at the moment?
Being a French originated company, the natural step is first to look in Europe, and that's also the place where most of the gas networks are located. So a natural market for us would be European market, and so far we have not had, at least for the gas vertical at DCbrain, projects outside Europe.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. Any concluding remarks from any one of you? Srikanth, perhaps first to you. Any final remarks before we close this part of the webinar, at least for category 3?
Sure. A quick one is, I think a lot of customers, especially in the industrial space, they're very cautious before they embark on some of these solutions. What I have seen help most is to spend a lot of time in terms of identifying the right problem to solve. And there are ways in which you can actually quantify the business benefit and also design these projects so that it delivers ROI in a very quick time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can well imagine with all the experience that you gained is that you also know better and better on which specific elements to focus on to realize savings. Is that correct as well?
That's right. Thank you.
And any final comments from you, Bram?
Well, to add to that, I always say to our customers that it's really nice to start big, thinking big, but you need to start small. It's good to have that point on the horizon to go to, with all the possibilities that these technologies bring. But it's very beneficial to start small and to make small impact and improvement on your operation. As it is often as well, it's not only a technology question. Often it's always as well a human and more a change management question in the organization as well. But we are, I think, all of us happy to guide customers with that journey.
Yeah, no, and I think that's indeed correct. And I can also say that based on all the years that I've been running technology deployments and supporting customers over the years in Shell, but also since starting technologycatalog.com, that it's very true that the non-technical elements are key to make sure that technology gets used.
Exactly.
So thanks for that. Any final comments from you, Geert?
Yeah, I probably align with what's been said. Gas distribution and transportation network are very traditional companies. They're very highly regulated, and being a small company working with very large companies with a lot of processes and times and decisions which are not really aligned with flexible and small companies. So that's a big challenge, a cultural challenge, and a way that innovation comes to these large regulated companies. And that's not easy. It takes time.
Yeah, and also on that part, I can certainly relate to that, having spoken to a couple of these big companies here in the Netherlands. The good news, I have to say, though, is that with all the changes and the challenges that the energy transition gives to those type of companies, they also realize they need to change and they need to do more with the same number of people, even less people.
Exactly.
Is that something you see as well?
Absolutely. Yes, there's the big picture is there. The road to the decarbonization, it's much still to be written, especially in the gas sectors. There are other areas where innovation is speeding up much faster, but it will definitely be happening. Nobody doubts about that.
Yeah. Excellent. So with that, we conclude the third category, digitalization, today. So 15 great presentations. And also thanks to all the attendees. And hopefully you will leave this webinar with many ideas on how you can improve your performance and realize your goals with technology. And we will continue to create visibility for technologies via the platform, technologycatalog.com, such that companies can find and select the right tech to improve performance. So with that, many thanks, and I wish you all a great rest of the day.